The Last of Us was commonly cited as the best video game of all time, and sure, I agreed it was definitely on the list, but it wasn't until The Last of Us Part 2 emotionally ruined me and spawned an obsession with the franchise that continues to financially ruin me that I loved it as much as everyone else. Last of Us means everything to me, so despite initially being against this TV show, I haven't been able to contain my excitement this past week, and I'm going to be doing a weekly spoiler-filled review as all 9 episodes come out. Fellow gamer girls and goofy goobers. I just got done listening to the podcast, the companion podcast to the TV show, and so now I'm gonna do this super low effort review. And a reason why I'm doing this, I mean, obviously I was probably gonna end up doing a video on the show once it had ended anyway. Also, I'm saving up to get some like better PC parts at the moment, and I just figured that these low effort videos are just a good way to pad out until that happens, you know? But yeah, so this is super low effort, kind of like the same formula as my old immediate review format. You know, I finished watching it about an hour ago. These are first impressions. I'm in the unscripted shed, so you know, I'm remaining consistent even though you can't see me. But yeah, in short, I liked it. If you would rather just listen to this on Spotify as you're doing something, I'm putting this on the Pelliculazy feed. Just search Pelliculazy on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Spotify. You can listen to this there if you want to instead. I liked it. Thank fucking God, because, you know, like, I wasn't really rooting for this show because we have the game, and the game is perfect. We don't fucking need it. But then the second trailer came out and Take On Me started playing, and that trailer made me fucking cry. Like that trailer got me tearing up real hard. And then from that point on, I was like, okay, excitement is actually ramping up, but still was very, very cautious about it. And especially when they were like, yeah, it's not gonna be the zombie virus isn't going to be through the air like it is in the games, and I was just like, what? I get why you okay, I know why you probably made that decision, but also why, because there's a pretty seminal moment in part 2 regarding that factor. So okay, but no, I really fucking liked it. Like, I was, and this past week I've been going insane, just shaking with excitement. I was fucking losing my shit 10 minutes before it aired, because I watched this like it was fucking 2010 and I was watching the latest episode of iCarly. I watched it as it aired with ads. I stayed up at 2 a.m. to watch it air. You know, that's how much I fucking love this, because usually when a new HBO show is airing, because HBO shows, you know, prime time is 9 p.m. Eastern, which is 2 a.m. here in the UK, and so usually when a new HBO show airs, like, I watch it the Monday evening instead of Monday at 2 a.m. But I wanted to watch this the moment it fucking came out. And watching it with ads is, oh my God, is a draining experience. God. How did we live with watching TV with ads for so long? It's terrible. I hate it. But yeah, anyway, I did like it, but I must say the second half of the episode did kind of fall apart, and I'm wondering if, as I said, I listened to the podcast, and I know, and they said they had a different reason for mashing episode 1 and 2 together, because originally it ended after Joel throwing the dead kid in the pile, and it's like this big mirror image of him holding Sarah as she's dead, and it's like, oh wow, a lot has changed in 20 years, that's crazy, and it was going to end there. And you know, they were like, well, we can't have a whole episode without Ellie, because this is Ellie's story. And so they mashed episode 1 and 2 together because they didn't want to end on that dour ending as well. Just, you know, 2 dead fucking kids. But also I feel like, for me personally, if I watched that great, just really fucking great first episode, and then next week came back to the second episode, which was kind of just like nowhere near as engaging, I think I would have been more likely to not come back than if I had to wait a week after that dour ending, if you get what I mean. I do have notes. I should refer to the notes. Yeah, okay. So the first note I got is that the opening exposition, which was so very clearly a Craig Mazin thing, I didn't watch Chernobyl. I watched the first episode like a few months after it finished, and I was like, why the fuck is everyone British? And I found it really boring, and I couldn't get over the fact that everyone was British, so I just only watched the first episode. I think that exposition, honestly, wasn't that bad. Honestly, like it wasn't that bad. It was kind of there to like people who know the game be like, hey, okay, we've changed this one thing, so just calm down. But then also it works as exposition for the virus, which was clearly a Craig Mazin thing, because listening to the podcast, he seems interested in that thing. And what I did like about the opening though is that it was quite eerie. You know, like the cinematography of that was quite eerie. Like there was a close up of the guy talking, and I was like, "Wow, this is spooky." And then like the wide shot as of well, it was like an MCU of like the crowd and like the depth of field changes. And I thought that was also quite eerie because this guy is talking about like the about like inevitable death of like billions, and everyone's just kind of mindlessly watching and as if they're not afflicted by it in any way, shape, or form. And I found that interesting. And Craig Mazin said in the podcast how he finds it interesting how there are these things in life that we know are gonna that are bad, and we just kind of pretend they're not there. And I think that's interesting to have the dialogue of the most terrifying thing you've ever heard, you know, something that would kill billions of us, but then to just have that contrasted with shots of people just not reacting to that at all. Like that's eerie. That was pretty good. Yeah, and then the extended opening. They took like what, the opening is like 15 minutes in the game. It was around 40 in the show, and I really like that. That was the strongest part of this episode. You don't need it. We don't need all of that context because you fully understand and get everything without it in the game. But I really welcomed it. You know, it was very sweet, and it was interesting kind of seeing the world very, very quickly go to shit through the perspective of a kid, of Sarah. And that I think was also where it shined, because it brings over the horror elements of the first game in that first half of this episode. You know, like in the background, like out of focus, like the gran, and you know, like they very clearly set up, oh yeah, she's deaf, she can't move, and you just see her kind of twitch, and you're like, oh fuck, that's that's and it's just kind of a good way to set up the cordyceps virus to show how fucking strong it is, and also how terrifying it is, because their mind is still in there, but yet they are just not in control of what they're doing. So yeah, that was kind of spooky, and I like that. That was scary and good. Yeah, I don't know. It was just sweet to see some more Sarah stuff. Like that shot of them driving in the car as everything goes to shit. That was just straight from the game, and I do feel like that sequence is more effective in the game, because in the game it's, you know, it's not, because this is a TV show, it's cutting to different shots, whereas in the game I feel like it was more impactful because it's all from that, you know, obviously one unbroken shot, and it's all from Sarah's perspective. Whereas in this, you're getting shot reverse shot of Joel and Tommy, as well as, you know, the shot from the game. So yeah, that part of it was better in the game, I feel, because you're actually the one, you know, because you are experiencing it and not seeing characters experience it. But the actual death of Sarah, I think, was far more effective in the TV show, purely because I think the performance was just so much better from Nico Parker, who plays Sarah in this. The first time I played Last of Us, it didn't really have an effect on me. That was when I was in my that was before I knew what empathy was. And I was just like, I don't know these characters yet. It doesn't have an effect on me. And then when I recently replayed it for the remake, I was like, okay, no, fuck, this is making me sad. Oh fuck. But this one actually made me actually cry, because I think Nico Parker did a really good job of kind of just not even like a desperation, just like she accepted she was done, and so did Tommy, and I think that's what made it so much more sad. And also just her like yelping, is that the right word? Also just like that was, it's just not pleasant to hear, is it? um But yeah, so I think the death in the show is actually better than in the game, and I wonder if that's gonna. Ooh, sorry, and I wonder if that's gonna be an unpopular opinion, because obviously the opening to Last of Us is such a beloved, iconic opening. However, then it very quickly went, because Sarah dies, and then you have the opening credits in the game, and I feel like that's kind of like a nice, cooler, like, okay, calm down. The whole game isn't gonna be this fucking, heavy. Okay, we're doing the opening credits. We're doing. Also, this also gives you some background on the virus, sort of. There isn't that in the show, which I understand, because you can't then do opening credits 40 minutes in. Need that. I mean, you don't need any title card at all. I can piece together that a lot of time has passed once you show Joel, and also, the destroyed fucking city. Oh, and also that's another thing. I don't know why they made it 2003. I have no issue with it because it has no fucking change whatsoever. But I was just like, why did they do that? Like, okay, sure, whatever. But yeah, like, you've already told me it's 20 years later, and there was the title card saying 2003. I know I can piece together that it's now 2023. You don't need another title card saying it's 2023. You don't, like, what? And that's like, also I'm probably gonna do spoilers for the game as well. So if you haven't played the game, maybe, play the game. Actually, you dumb fuckhead. Suck a dick, dumb shit. I'm rewatching BoJack at the moment. But yeah, that's another thing. Another note I have is that, weirdly, I think because usually, games are kind of treated with very little respect, and honestly, I fucking get it. Games are seen as goofy fun time for dumb people, whereas TV and film, oh, that's the intellectual medium. And I feel like, interestingly enough, with Last of Us, it's the other way around, because whereas the game is so subtle, I think the show is gonna be a lot more handholdy, and that's probably gonna be my biggest criticism of it, because I love how subtle the game is. Like, there's just enough for you to pick up on, and it just feels so human, whereas this feels very TV showy. Like the flashback at the end, I feel like they're going too heavy with the Joel PTSD, like with the drinking and stuff, and then that straight up flashback. And I was like, okay, I know what's going through his head. And listening to the podcast, Troy Baker, who voiced and, mocapped Joel in the games, and he was like, now flashback is usually a cheap narrative tool for exposition, and I was like, yeah, it is. And then he said, but you need to see what's going on inside his head. And I was just like, Troy, how much are they paying you to do this podcast? Because every time you talk about Last of Us, it is so just amazing to hear, because you're so passionate about it. And you clearly love the game and the characters so much. But with this podcast, just felt like a lame interview you were giving. So I feel like he's kind of just hyping up the show because he has to. But you don't need it, because you never have that once in the games, and you can tell when he's thinking about Sarah and, all of that trauma and the grief that he hasn't fully processed, because do you ever fully process grief? But yeah, so we didn't need that. That was for the dumb TV audience, which is so weird to say, because usually I'd be like saying for the dumb gamer audience. But yeah, it is good to see that. And Craig Mazin said this in the podcast, that they're bringing over, like, a big part of the game is that love is almost bad in a sense, because it brings out like this innate, like, primal violence is what he was saying. And you do get that in the scene, and that's kind of what the games are all about how love and hate are the same thing. They both lead to that sort of primal emotion, I guess. What's next? We finally get to Ellie. And I like I really like it was just quite a fan servicey shot of panning up from the Converse that she wears, because I saw the Converse and was like, oh fuck yes, we're finally at Ellie. And then of course it's Bella Ramsey. And honestly, I'm not sold yet on her. Like, I saw some reviews, and they were like, some gaming YouTubers who had only been given the first episode, and they were like, Pedro Pascal and Bella Ramsey are Joel and Ellie. And I'm like, Pedro Pascal? Yeah. Yeah, he's Joel. Yeah, sure. Bella Ramsey? Honestly, kind of disappointed by. Like, I'm not sold on her yet. Like, watching interviews with her, they're very sweet. Also, it might just be because Ellie means a lot to me. So, like, the slightest fucking modicum, is that the right word? Of low quality is gonna make me be like, nope, no. Because I don't think I will ever love a real person as much as I love Ellie. Like, and like I don't just love Ellie, like I want to be Ellie. I want to just go through the most traumatic. No, like just like I plan to get the tattoo she has in the second game. If I could hopefully get that by the end of this year, that would be great. Um, but also you fucking pump me full of estrogen. Hopefully I'll just look like how she looks in part 2. That'd be fucking sick. That'd be so cool. Well, my main criticism of the show overall is going to be that, well, it's less impactful because I'm not the character. I'm just witnessing it, so it's less immersive. But where's the note? Yeah, here it is. Bella, a bit quickly comes off as whiny. The voice they do is very high pitched, and I think maybe it's just they didn't get a good dialogue coach for the accent, maybe because their voice doesn't seem very high pitched in interviews because obviously they're English. And in the game, when Ellie does, those Ellie things where she gets, you know, angsty and a bit rude and whatever, it just I don't have any other way to describe it other than that's Ellie. But yeah, otherwise she's fine. I just haven't seen enough of this interpretation of Ellie to be like, oh yeah, this is Ellie. But I want to. I want to. I want to love Bella as Ellie. But right now it's just not there because honestly we haven't got that much of Ellie yet. I got a note here that just says these ads are killing me. This is so at the beginning I was like, yeah, and episode 2 kind of dragged. Sorry, the second half, which was originally episode 2, kind of dragged. Um and my and at first it didn't. I was like, oh, this is quite nice actually, because it's kind of because I think the world building in the 2 Last of Us games is absolutely just incredible. Like part 2 especially, just the most immersive experience I've ever had from a piece of art. The world in those games feels so lived in and just fully realized. And in this, I kind of liked how they kind of expanded on that. Like with that guy like sending messages to people in the QZ. I thought that's quite nice. And like, oh yeah, that would be a thing that happens. Okay, no, there it's not total just awful fascist fucking state. There is a nice sort of sense of community going on here as well. So I thought that was nice. But then I just feel like that kind of dragged. Those scenes just went on for too long, and then they fully cut out a scene from the game because in the game you're playing as Joel and you're just kind of walking, and then you come across a bunch of guys. And they cut that because that's essentially the tutorial. But I just felt like they let scenes go on for too long that we didn't need. But I don't know, maybe I think that's just because I'm used to the game, and I was just like, wait a minute, no, there's a scene here like we've missed. Go back. So it might just be that because I'm so used to the game that it felt jarring, and to people who haven't played the game, maybe it wasn't jarring. I don't know. Did I mention that I'm putting this on Spotify? Yeah, okay. This is from later. I don't know, I feel like they padded some of the world building out a bit too much, and then we're like, oh, we didn't do that scene where they go back to the apartment. Oh well. I don't know. But anyway, also there was the scene where what I like so much about the game is that you're so unsure of what Joel and Tess are to each other, because like the first time I played it, I was like, oh, they're just friends, and then when I replayed it recently, I was like, oh no, they are romantically involved, I think, maybe, are they? I don't know. Whereas with this, it's not, two people sleeping in the same bed doesn't necessarily mean anything, but I feel like with this, they did make it a bit more explicit that they are a couple of sorts, and I think I just preferred in the game where it was more ambiguous as to what their relationship was, because that feeds into the idea that Joel is closed off after Sarah, and it's not until Ellie kind of opens him up, and so and which makes the relationship between Joel and Ellie that much more endearing. Whereas with this, it's just like, oh well, he was very clearly with Tess before. Yeah, it's weird because this show is going to be very different to the game in a lot of ways, but also at the same time contextualizes a lot of stuff in the game. And so it's weird that a lot of what happens in this show is going to be like, yeah, this is actually canon in the game too, actually. And then a lot of stuff is going to be like, this is wildly different. Because, Neil said that, I remember he said like ages ago, it's like an extended edition of the game. I got a note here that says, don't fuck this up, foreshadowing. That's just a funny, just a funny line to hear, knowing what happens at the game. Because he does fuck it up, and that's funny. Sorry if you haven't played the game, but also, what are you doing? Oh yeah, and then I got just a general note here. Craig Mazin is a bad director, maybe? I think maybe he just isn't the best at getting performances out of people, because some lines of dialogue here, they weren't bad lines of dialogue, but they were delivered just very stale. Like when Tess is in the room with those guys, and then the room blows up, all the delivery in that scene felt so stilted to me. And then also, I think this is just a Pedro Pascal problem. But in the trailer, where he does the line where Ellie's like, "I'm not family, no, you're cargo," and it's that's the line from that game. I always felt weird about that line because the way Pedro says it, he says it as if car and go are two separate words. He doesn't say cargo. He says cargo.
I'm not family.
No, you're cargo.
And he does that in this episode with some words as well. Just micro pauses that are ever just not micro enough, But yeah, I don't know. There were just every now and then there was a line, and I was like, "You didn't want to do another take?" But yeah, overall, did it live up to my expectations from when the show was first announced? It far exceeded them. I thought it was going to be a dumpster fire. Did it exceed my expectations when the first trailer came out? Yeah. But did it exceed the expectations I've had for the past week watching interviews for the show and just shaking with excitement because I feel like there's so much excitement in me. I need to get it out. I need to kick the air. I need to have clenched fists and just shake my arms about because I feel like I'm going fucking insane and I'm hyperventilating. No, obviously not, but also that was a nice feeling to be that excited for something again. Last of Us means fucking everything to me. So yeah, I'm still excited for the next episode, even though there were parts of the show that I didn't like, but very, very strong fucking start. Really fucking strong start. Like that first half. Oh, it's so fucking good. And I'm really excited. And next episode, Neil directed it. So fuck yeah. But then episode 3, they're like alluding to like this big reveal that the fans are gonna love, or whatever. Something happens in episode 3 that fans will be like, oh fuck yeah. And I'm just really wondering what it is. And part of me, maybe it's like a really explicit sex scene between Nick Offerman and Murray Bartlett. Or maybe Tess doesn't die? Could you imagine if they did that? Which would just be stupid. But I have a very strong feeling Abby is going to show up. Or we're going to get a scene with Abby. We're going to see the Fireflies at the hospital, at St. Mary's Hospital. And Abby's going to be there. And then the episode is going to end. Because I don't know what that thing they could be alluding to is that happened so early on in the game, you know? So it's got to be something they added. But yeah, I don't know. When Abby shows up, I'm gonna lose my fucking shit. For real. I'm gonna lose my fucking shit when Abby shows up. But yeah, I think that's it for the first episode. If you haven't played the game, just play the fucking game. Whatever is cheapest. You know what? I'm gonna have a code. Because I pre-ordered the Firefly edition of Last of Us Part 1 for PS5, which didn't come out until January 26th here for some fucking reason. And it comes with a free code for the PS5 game. And I'm like, what am I going to do with this? I guess I'll sell it on eBay. But I mean, if any of you live in the UK, you want to PayPal me? I'll give you the code. But no, seriously, play the fucking game. Like, you don't need to be a gamer to play it. It's a very accessible game, which is why they adapted it into an audio-visual only medium, and it's actually so far fucking worked and been translated well. Sure, not only because Neil Druckmann is just a fucking genius, but because, you know, so much of it is already like a movie to begin with. But it's not until a second game that is just fully takes advantage of the video game medium that I'm going to be like, this is you can't translate this. You can't translate this. And also, they said that when they do that, the second game will be 2 seasons, which makes sense because the second game is double the length of the first game. But yeah, anyway, that was the review. If you're listening to this on Spotify, you're probably one of Joe's friends, and you're like, where is Joe? This is the Joe podcast. We're probably going to do like a full-on actual episode of Pelliculazy once it finishes. Me, you know, being a diehard fan of Last of Us, and then him being a newcomer. So stay tuned for that, I guess. But then if you're listening to it on Spotify, and you're like, what is this fucking podcast? But yeah, sorry for this low effort video. That is the end of the review. Will I keep doing this? Probably. Yeah, we'll have to see how good or how bad the next 8 episodes are. But yeah, it's not going to be a dumpster fire. It will at the very least be good, because my well-being hinges on it greatly. But yeah, no, thank you for listening to this, if you have. I don't know, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what people think of this, because it's kind of such a sacred work of art, and I just want more Ellie. Just give me more Ellie. Give me more Ellie. I want more Ellie. Give me more Ellie in Ellie so too. There better be so much Ellie in episode 2 that the episode is literally called Ellie so 2. But yeah, that's it. I'm gonna walk out into the rain, back into my house, and edit this very quickly because I'm recording this at, I don't know, it's got to be like nearly 5 now, and then I'm gonna go to bed. Then I'm gonna wake up. I'm gonna go to work. Then I'll fucking kill myself. Yeah. Yeah, okay.